It was an impassioned plea/job offer to the half-term governor of Alaska, delivered by a Tea Party leader. You must run. No less than the survival of our country is at stake. Yet in our number one story, Sarah Palin declines, perhaps because the job she was being recruited for wasn't president, but Republican Party chair. The Tea Party nation president, Judson Phillips, calling for a conservative takeover of the RNC, in part to, quote, rescue the party from those who would make this party socialist light. In an open letter to Sarah Palin, Phillips makes his case. We need you as chairman of the RNC. You have shown in the past no hesitation to take on the establishment. You did it in Alaska. If we end up with establishment control of the GOP and their support for an establishment candidate in 2012, Obama and the socialists will have won. Phillips suggesting Palin's current role as superstar would help the RNC with some of its financial woes. As the Washington Times reports, the RNC, under the leadership of Michael Steele, will enter the 2012 elections $20 to $25 million in the hole. Steele hasn't indicated whether or not he will run for re-election in mid-January, but he could point out that the RNC spent 75 times more on Sarah Palin's clothes than it did on its widely reported field trip to a West Hollywood bondage-themed nightclub. Just something to consider. A chairwoman Palin would have to deal with the day-to-day grind of managing the committee's 168 members, as well as a dramatic cut in pay. And, oh yeah, she wouldn't be able to run for president. So it should come as no surprise that Palin declined the Tea Party proposal through a statement. I respect the desire to have someone in charge of the RNC who understands the wishes of the conservative grassroots and understands that power resides with the people and not the vested interests in D.C. However, the primary role of the RNC chair seems to be that of fundraiser-in-chief, and there are others who probably could be much more comfortable asking people for money than I would be, and they would definitely enjoy it more. So for now, Palin will continue to operate in her comfort zone, asking people to buy her books, pay to hear her speak, and to watch her reality show, in which she makes $250,000 per episode to do this.
He's coming right here. Just wait. Wait till it turns broadside and stops. Okay. Go ahead, right here.
Good. There you go, baby. There you go.
250 grand. Now, time to call in MSNBC political analyst and author of Revival, The Struggle for Survival Inside the Obama White House, Richard Wolff. Good evening, Richard.
Sam, good evening.
Now, let me ask you this. If Palin doesn't believe in her ability to ask people for money, how does she intend to run for president?
Oh, you people in the reality-based world are so quaint. Don't you know that Mama Grizzlies don't go with the flow? This is a dead fish argument here. There are people who would be raising money for her, and there are people who come up with her foreign policy. You don't need to do this stuff as a non-traditional candidate. So why the question in the first place? Look, if she wanted to solve the RNC's money problems, she wouldn't have to raise money. She'd just have to come up with a couple more books and she'd be just fine. The question here is behind the false modesty. Oh, she cannot do this stuff. She knows she can do it and do it that much better. And running for president is going to require vastly more money. And whether she does it or other people will do it, she'll find it quick enough when she runs.
Now, so what are we to make of this letter from Judson Phillips? I mean, because obviously he's a fan of Sarah Palin's. One would expect that he would want her to run for president. Was this some type of attempt to sideline her? Because,
you
frankly,
think?
Well, I mean, that's...
Yeah.
And so is that an indication that the Tea Party is coordinating with some other elements of the Republican Party to get her out of the way?
Let me tell you about a conversation I had with a quote-unquote Tea Party candidate who owes a lot, you would think, to people like Sarah Palin, not least because she backed this particular individual. And the way they were talking about Sarah Palin did not suggest that they had any admiration for her, any gratitude, any sense of obligation to her. In fact, they raised all the same concerns that these establishment folks have been raising, both privately and in some cases publicly, about her. So the idea that the Tea Party and Sarah Palin and the Republican Party are all in the same place here isn't actually true, because you come up against personal ambition, you come up against different ideology, and the very real concerns from people, even inside the Tea Party, who have looked at the numbers and say Sarah Palin cannot make it because at least 40%, maybe more, of Republicans say she's not qualified to be president, and all of these independent voters do not think they don't approve of what she's doing. So they can see the numbers just as well as anyone else can, in spite of the rhetoric and the campaigning that we've seen.
So is this just the opening salvo? I mean, does it get a little bit more hostile after this?
Well, if it doesn't now, it will later. And the problem for all of these people is that what doesn't kill Sarah Palin will make her stronger. The more they oppose her, the more the good old boys come out there and give her a lesser job or say that she's not qualified, as they're all saying behind the scenes in Washington, the more she will say, look, it's me against the old boys, the establishment, the same old way of doing politics. And that will be her base, her momentum. So it's a self-defeating proposition, and that's why you see people, Karl Rove, who stuck his neck out, saying she wasn't qualified, now coming back and maybe keeping his mouth shut.
And she must know this was an attempt to sideline her. That's why she quashed it so quickly.
Yeah, well, if you think you're going to save a country from a socialist president, and you're seeing these crowds and everyone's saying you can do it, you should do it, why would you want the RNC of all places? It's going to be sidelined as it was in this last election. It's a functionary job. It's the kind of thing she will fill with her own people from Alaska, for all we know.
Right. Richard Wolff, MSNBC political analyst, many thanks. That's December 6th. I'm Sam Cedar, in for Keith Olbermann tonight. Thanks for joining us. Have a good night.